Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being a show, we're talking about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about Season 1, Episode 3 of The Midnight Club. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. So obviously Alanka tries to tell Kevin about everything she saw at the end of the last episode, and he kind of shrugs it off as like, right, it's just most likely your medication. The fact of the matter is, it was probably like, it was so crazy what you saw, like it had to just be like our medicine or whatever. And she's like, yeah, sure, whatever. Because she felt like he was very dismissive, which he didn't mean for it to be like that. But he's probably like, no, you just got caught up in all of it. It's just like, there's nothing strange here. But it kind of leads into something really neat Alanka talks about later on. About she's always had this voice inside of her that's always kind of pushed her forward, whether it's like on a test or just like on these different aspects of her life. And she's like, ever since she's gotten to this place, that voice has gotten so much louder. The whispers are so much louder. And Kevin said this interesting thing where he was like, right, you don't have to listen to the voices. But he's like, right, I hope whatever it is, because he's thinking that you are looking into the Julia thing so hard because, yeah, it's a great mystery that you get to solve. It distracts you from, the inevitable that, hey, we're all dying. You're dying. Like, but he stops himself from going that far. It's like, yes, it's implied. And he feels like actually saying it out loud is too cruel. So he kind of leaves it at that. But he says this interesting line when he leaves where he's like, I hope you find what you're looking for. That way the voices will leave you alone. I'm like, oh, that's such an interesting line. And it ties into his story to a lot of extent too. So, and maybe a part of that line is what inspires part of his story later on. We'll have to wait and see. But it is family day. And I love that Alanka invited Anya. It's like, oh yeah, my step-foster dad, Tim, would like love to meet you and stuff like that. It's like, I've told him all about you. It's like, oh, talking about that, how much of a bitch I am or something. It's like, no, that you're the strongest person I can know. And like, Anya knows like her and Alanka have had their issues, especially last episode. But that moment for her is just almost like, wow, like, I've been a prick and you've been talking nice. And it's like, right. Like there's a roomy bond getting created there. But I love the whole family day thing because Anya was like, Tim was like, oh yeah, I met your room. And she was like escorting me around, showing me everywhere. He's like, I've never laughed this hard in a long time. And Lanka's like, really? And then Anya's just kind of looking like, putting on my, I'm putting on my best, I'm on my best behavior. It was actually really funny and cute. But later on, like obviously Tim's worried about Alanka because Alanka was hoping that maybe Tim will have some ideas about the numbers that she found in Julia's drawings. Because she saw the hourglass thing again, and then now the numbers. So now it is a situation of like, she's trying to figure it out. Her dad's like, well, could it be longitude, latitude? And they're like, no, it doesn't make any sense if it was. So he's worried, like, okay, are you okay? And she's like, you don't have to worry about it. And he's like, why not? And Anya's like, because we look after each other. And you could tell that took Alanka by surprise, like here. But like, she heard that. I wouldn't say it was specifically Kevin that told her last episode that's who Anya is. Yes, she's a little rough around the edges, quite rough around the edges. But when the going gets tough, she's always protective of everyone there because she does care about them all. So I did think that was beautiful. There's also this situation with Natsuki. She got she got a couple pictures of her dad from her mom, but she specifically wanted the picture of her dad, the last picture of him that exists before, oh God. Oh yeah, before he got like ambushed and died. So, and her mom's like, why would you want to pick that picture? Like, there's so many other pictures of this, but it's like, I think it's because it's her dad in his final, like, it's one of the last photographed pictures of him. It's almost like the last thing of him. Like, that was the last thing that has some connection to him before he was gone. So for her, like, maybe it makes her feel comforting to have that with her when it's eventually her time, to go. Maybe it's like, right, a last picture of her dad in existence in conjunction with her leaving. I don't know. It's even sadder, too, because Natsuki found her friend Tristan dead. And she's like, right, I thought Tris was getting better, And just and it's just, because it's what can you say? It's just the sad reality of it all, and no one tries to like comfort her or anything. Like everyone just turns and walks away. You could see Alanka wants to say something. I think she wants, but it's like, right, what can I say? What can I do to ease your pain? It's like there's nothing. I gotta let you deal with it. Like me, like trying to like it's just probably going to make things worse. I think that's because everyone's understanding. So like. Because I think in a moment like that, I mean, me as a person, I want to like be there, comfort. Like, are you okay? But like, I don't know. I feel like sometimes it's hard to say, you know, what a person needs in that moment. Do they need you're comforting them? You know, it's like they don't need that. Maybe they just need to be alone. And she comes back later and she's watching the guy like who changes the sheets. She was even like, right, do you wash the sheets after the person goes, or do you like get rid of it? And he never really gave her a straight answer about that, but he talks about like, no, Dr. Stanton did a really good job picking these pillows because these are beautiful pillows. He talks about the Egyptians, like how they supported their necks by like cutting like a whole, like a neck part in from wood. So, and he says this interesting thing where he's like, people, we fear death more than we do pain. And he's almost like, that's so backwards. Death is when all pain is gone. He's like, almost like there is some, the release of death. Like it is the very human nature of being afraid of death, you know, but there is some effed up, like death has this beautiful tragedy to it. Like obviously death it sucks when you lose someone, them being gone from this world, and obviously you know we fear our own mortality, especially when we're like staring down the barrel, you know. And for him to say that line was just kind of like, yeah, but it's like when you're in so much pain, especially like maybe in Tristan's case, it's like, right, you're all kind of in your own pains, and it's like with death, like all the pain is gone. There is this release, this kind of almost peace after it, like all the pain ends, you know. And I don't want that to be extrapolated to other, you know, aspects of death of like, you know, someone self-causing that. You know, I don't want it to be extrapolated to that, you know, but I'm just saying in this situation of, you know, I don't know, I just thought that was kind of beautiful, especially because he references Jim Morrison and she's like, yeah, my dad loved the Doors. And then that last line, loved them, you know, it's like, ugh. Because I think because I don't know if she said it different. Like she's like, oh, my dad loves the Door, and then she said love them, or I think she already said past tense beforehand too. But I think emphasizing that even more, loves them, you know. So I think especially because she got that picture of her dad and now losing Tristan, because that was like right after like they all met up with their families and everything too. So I think it was just kind of like it was all just kind of back to back like that. We got a little bit with Spence and his dad. Which seen that actor in quite a few. I wouldn't say Charmed is the most recent thing I saw him in. He played. I won't spoil it in case you're like the Charmed reboot specifically. I won't spoil that in case you're like in the middle of watching the 4th season. But he popped up in the 4th and final season. Either way. Before that, probably like he just one of those actors you've seen him stuff. I know like Van Helsing, the TV show, is one of the things I've seen him in, but. Spence got a card from or was giving a card to his mom, and it was signing it, and he's like, oh, so she's not, he's like, yeah, you know, your mom, she has the sniffles, you know, they say when they're sick, people are sick, we probably shouldn't come here, and he's like, yeah, mom has the sniffles a lot, doesn't she? And it's like, yeah, you know, it's like, right, you know, she's got to meet up with her church group and stuff, and he's like, yeah, I could go with you, we could surprise her, and he's like, we both know that won't go the way either one of us would want it to. So it kind of gets into that sad territory of like, once again, I don't know if Spence actually is gay, but because he does have AIDS and it's seen as like a gay thing, that it might be a thing of, he might be not, I don't know. I'm assuming maybe he is, and that probably like doubles it even more, like the whole like AIDS situation. So I think, especially with his dad being like, yeah, like almost like your mom wouldn't want you around her church, because it's like, once again, it's that thing of, once again, I also have to stress it, does not apply to every religious person, but there are quite a few religious people who see it and being gay as a sin, that it is something mentally wrong with you for being gay, you know, that it's like a screw loose or something like that. So it seems like we kind of touch on that with a little bit of that. Amish, it turns out his parents are, I think they got deported. So trying to get them back into the States is going to be a little harder because I think it was a situation of no one expected them not to get kind of, not asylum. Maybe asylum was the word that that his aunt had used. So it's like, right, no one expected that. So, because obviously it's a timetable. It's like, right, I want my parents here before the end. I want to see them one last time, spend time with them before it happens, you know? So there's that. We get a little bit of Sandra praying with her parents. Her parents didn't show up. And I love that whole like thing with Mark. And he's just like, cause she's like, yeah, mom's a movie star. I was like, so they give her all this stuff for free. And he's like, wait. If she's a movie star, they give her these nice soaps for free. He's like, I should be a movie star. He's like, you mind if I take any of these? She's like, go ahead. He's like, okay, you mind if I take the lemon and the lime? And he's just going back for more and more. And she's like, yeah, it's like, right. My grandfather like made, or like grandfather or great grandfather made soap. And he's like, oh really? And she's like, yeah, he's the one that did this and that. And Mark's like, I don't believe a single word of that, but these are some nice soaps. I thought that was kind of neat. Like, and it was almost this sweet thing for Sherry because like it seems like her mom doesn't show up a lot. She's in that situation where it's just like, right, oh, looks like we've circled back to bears. Like, go ahead and put it over there with all the other bears. So I guess she always sends gifts to kind of apologize. So there is some truth to that, most likely. Like like there might be truth in like, right, her mom might actually be a movie star, and it's like, right. So that's also the thing. Like she lies so much, but there's probably are nuggets of truth sprinkled in there. I mean, that's what makes the best lies anyway. So. Because like that's the one thing he didn't call her out for. He called her out about like her grandfather or great grandfather making soap, but he was like, oh no, that's some bullshit. But everything else he believes. So I believe he kind of he knows when she's lying and when she's not. But she kind of like when he called her out for it, like she wasn't shocked or upset. She was actually kind of like, so it's like I think that might have been a lie she told on purpose, knowing it was a lie. Like other times, I think she tells lies to kind of overcompensate for just like. Everything, like she talks about her family in the way she does just because I think it's her way to kind of it's like holding on to them to some extent, knowing that they aren't there for her in some way. So it's like by talking about them in some way, it's almost like keeping them close. And it's like, oh, like there's an excuse for why they're not here. I think that it's her defense mechanism to kind of cover up the hurt. So I just thought that was so fascinating. But then we kind of get into, well, Natsuki thought she saw Tristan in the bed when she went by, and it went back. The bed was empty. She's like, it felt soft, like it wasn't like anyone was laying there. So now it's like, okay, could have been a sign, and everyone's like, nope. Anya in particular is like, no, if it was, because Sandra's like, oh, she could have just came back to say hello or something. It's like, no, we agreed if anything happened, if we will do everything we can. She's like, if I die, I promise that I will make it super damn clear. Because she's also like pissed at Sandra too, not pissed, but just like annoyed, like, right, the world is just so many shades of colors. There's so much like colors and wonderment in this world. Why do people allocate the afterlife to just simply black and white? Like there's so much wonderment, there's just so much we don't know, and yet when it comes to the afterlife we keep it boring, super black and white. It's like, oh, heaven and hell, that's all there is, But she says, like, when I do it, I'm going to make it pretty damn sure that I'm going to make it something tangible that you can bring back to be like, see, this is proof that Anya reached out to us. It's like, I'm going to make it pretty fucking clear. So, but obviously it's story time, and it's Kevin's turn. And we're only 3 episodes in. Kevin probably has the most disturbing story so far for me, because there's a ghost supernatural element to it, but before we even got to that, it was the most disturbing because it's too grounded and too real. It's just like, ugh. Like, the fact is, it's like, hey, here's Dusty, especially because that was Kevin's issue. Because Alanka ran into his family, and especially, it was definitely triggered by the conversation he had with Alanka that was kind of based on a conversation he had with his mom. He's like, my family's, yeah, they're great, until they're not. I know when they're arguing or when they're not or this and that, it's like, oh, I'm the perfect son. I'm the perfect brother. I'm the perfect boyfriend. It's just like, he's like, I got detention like a dozen times. Like for him, it's like people hold me to some high standard. Like I'm a good guy. He's like, maybe I'm not, And I think obviously that's reflected in the story. But his mom is like, oh, your brother, he's going to do the same thing you did. And it's like, yeah, but what if he wants to do like the play stuff? It's like, no, well, he'll do both of it. It's like, you got this legacy to protect. And he's telling his brothers like, hey, when you forget about my legacy, do you. Like your high school experience should be yours, not mine. And it seems like his mom is overcompensating because like she's like, your dad basically fucked up our name and you basically restored like some honor to our name. So she doesn't appreciate him kind of telling his brother just kind of drop. It's like, no, your legacy means so much. And I think maybe it's also her way to like hold on to it. Like, oh, you did something great for the family. And this way we can always like, maybe it's her overcompensation for, I mean, maybe just stuff simply with their dad, but also just maybe it's purely from the fact is of Kevin's dying. So then there's everything with his girlfriend, which I was like, there's something between you and Ilanka. But Ilanka wasn't, I mean, I think she was kind of caught off guard because it's like, oh, I called you her sister. I called her your sister and everything. Oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't know. Because I think none of them are, I think well, for Ilanka, it's like, right, the time we've been here, you've talked about Catherine, but you never talked about her in a romantic sense. And I think for her, it's almost like I think it's almost to I didn't expect anyone here to actually be in a relationship because no one talks about it. Like, it's like, it is that thing of, well, we are dying. So it is kind of, you get into that territory of, I can't even say this is what Ilanka's thinking, but I think it might cross someone's mind. It's like you being in a relationship with someone who's dying. It's like, that's a whole complicated thing. And especially at a young age too. Like that's a lot to kind of carry, you know? It just made me think, like, I don't know if that was kind of part of like Ilanka's thinking of like, oh yeah, you being in a relationship, but it also could just be like, no, you didn't say anything about it. It's kind of the point, I think, like, you know, so. But Kevin's story is about Dusty. And the moment like Dusty's hearing about Nancy, once again, it's also the befitting fact is that these characters are being portrayed. Once again, I don't know whether that's just for the sake of the show purposes of telling the story. And I think that casting isn't done by act. I think it's very on purpose with the storytelling itself, but also for the sake of the show and the storytelling in that regard. But like, the fact is that do correct me if I'm wrong, that the person who plays Nancy is the actress who also plays his girlfriend, Catherine, right? So that's what I thought was so fascinating, where I'm like, oh, and what'd you do? I mean, she wasn't the only one, but you brutally murdered her in the story. So the fact is he snuck out of his house and then like he murdered her. And I was like, the way he was sneaking into her house, I was like, oh, this is sinister as shit. And he's hearing these like whispers and stuff. And then like he bashes her in with a hammer. I was like, God. I was like, fuck, dude. That's why I'm like, this might be, at least so far, this is the most disturbing story just because of that. But then he goes back home and he's like, right, I did a good job. I think I did a good job. He's like, now please tell them to leave me alone. Because his mom can't talk, but he's like, she listens. And so he goes in his room and he's like, every night he sees the ghosts. And he's like, the thing about them is the newer one, the fresher kills, what do? They're spending the entire time screaming, though no one can hear them. And eventually they get tired of it and they realize like there's no point. But the older ones, they stare because everyone knows. It's like, it's there, you know, he's like, maybe that's hell when everyone's like, you know, everyone is staring at you because everyone knows. So I thought that was such an interesting and super creepy element. Also love the whole break in the story when he's doing he's like, oh, and they're like, oh my God, not the smile thing again. He's like, wait, what? And they're like, yeah, you did it last month when you did also a serial killer story. You did a smile thing. He's like, oh man, I forgot about that. He's like, well, this time it's a symbol. It's like a X with almost like a field and hourglass. And the Alonco's like, hey, what? Never mind. Go ahead. So it keeps going. And there's the whole Sheila of it all, where it's like Sheila's talking about Nancy and everything. It's like, right, we've sat beside each other for so long, and I've never actually spoken like 2 words to you before now. It's kind of crazy. And who is Sheila played by? But obviously the actress who's playing Ilanka too. So I think that's so fascinating. And I love the mesh being like, oh, Ilanka, don't fall for like the broody type or whatever. And it's just like, what was the conversation? It was like, I was like, she's, Sandra being like, she's being, driven by her hoo-ha. And Anya's like, she's with her what? And it's like, yeah, like, girls like Dusty, guys like Dusty, even the teachers like Dusty. And he's like, oh yeah, and Mesh's like, oh yeah, wait a minute, like cause he was like, oh yeah, that's terrible. Oh wait a minute, fuck you. But he's like, no, it is a problem that people do like him. And so he's like, oh, one place Sheila would be going is one place, and the other place means like, ooh, and the makeout place. And I love Anya just adding in, oh, her hoo-ha was driving you north, was driving Dusty north. But they stopped by Nancy's place. And he's like, no. And the entire time, every time, that's also making you look more and more suspicious. The fact is that every time someone says something, you're just like, maybe she's sick. Maybe she went to Vegas with her parents or something like that. It's like, no, I'm sure she didn't. Because other people know that she, because one of her other friends was like, hey, you should throw a party because your parents aren't going to be here. So, and now he's still keeping calm, but it's like, right, Sheila calls the police, which Stanton is the detective in this particular case. And it's like, so she probably recognizes the card immediately because she asked about it. So it's like, right, he is a serial killer. We know he's killed. At first I was like, oh, it looked like Nancy was his third victim. Looking at the ghost in his house, I was like, no, it's more than that. And I do love that when they initially went to Nancy's place, Nancy's ghost was standing outside screaming when no one can hear them, obviously. Can you hear her? But she's popping in every once in a while. And it's just kind of, the sweat's kind of, not literally, but also figuratively, it's kind of going down the back of Dusty's neck. And just, oh, I gotta go home. And when he's going home, especially because the detective, she asked about like something. It's almost like some chatting thing, like AOL or something else, kind of wondering if Nancy, because I guess that's how Dusty's met all his other victims. Because she must be the first victim from their school, because he found like the perfect opportunity, but everyone else he's killed is, which if you do look at his victims, all ladies that I think he reached out to. The one he was talking to, I think his name was Jessica, online this time. So that's why the detective was probably asking about it, because the symbol was probably left at those other crime scenes too. So she knows like something's up, because they haven't found the bodies. They just know that these are missing people, and with that, the more and more time passed, the more it seems like something sinister happened. So. And then you had Sheila showing up being like, right, I think something happened to Nancy, because kind of like Alanka, like that, she's almost like, this voice is telling me something. Like, she's like, I know by the way the detective was asking questions. Like, I think something happened to Nancy. I think she was murdered, and I need your help to prove it. And at the same time, the ghost of Nancy is squeezing his throat. Because earlier, all the ghosts were screaming at him. Obviously, you can't hear anything, but he was like, shut up. So I guess maybe for the first time, he's starting to hear it, or maybe he's just annoyed. Like, the fact that she was acting like he was hearing it. So I think maybe it was also not even just about their yells or screams. Maybe it wasn't even that. Maybe it was simply about the stairs. I don't know. It made it so much. But your boy does this classic thing, and apparently he's done this before. Two, they're like, don't you dare. I was like, what's going on? Two, B, continue. They're like, oh, damn it, Kevin. It's like, okay. He's like, yeah, you know the deal. It's like, right. It's like, right, stay alive to hear how it ends. He's like, see, and it's worked out so far. I mean, you're all still alive for now, so. But ultimately, they go into the elevator, and it's in that moment, because Alanka, remember, thanks to the story utilizing, the hourglass thing, she found out where she remembered it. It was from the elevator, and it's part of the elevator that's super new. It's like, right, this looks newishly installed, and so it turns out it's a button, but pressing it did nothing. And I was like, wait, could the numbers be a password? But it's like, no, like the floors there's no 9. So I was like, no, it can't be that. I was like, did you have to press it like a certain amount of times in quick succession? I was like, how does that going to work? But they go to the basement, but then pressing the basement and the hourglass button, they go down below, and you're like, okay, this is creepy as hell. And as I heard, so there's a secret room, and at least Alanka's not by herself. Kevin's there to witness it as well, which also I think speaks volumes, because Kevin is the one, like, kind of in those visions that she had. He ends up being a focus of it. Maybe it's just because they get so close, and he ends up being kind of her partner in crime with all of this. Either way, they go there, and I was like, the elevator situation being what it was, I'll go ahead and spoil it. I can't remember if that was last season. No, that was season 2. That wasn't. I was trying to remember if that was season 3 or not. The whole Ben elevator thing. I think that was the season 2 story. Yeah, that wasn't the season 3 story. That was season 2. It kind of heavily reminded me of that. I was like, and Kevin was still in the elevator. I'm like, good thing he's in the elevator because he could stop it from like going back up or whatever. And so ultimately, she's investigating, finds like the hourglass symbol, and the elevator starts going up. I was like, the gate isn't even closed either. I was like, it must be like set on a timer. I was like, well, that sucks. I was like, is she going to be able to squeeze back in and that? Nope, she's down there and it's completely dark. Luckily, she has like the matches, but she sees the scary old lady again and pitch black into the episode. So it's definitely going to be really interesting to ultimately see where all of this ends up taking us going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I'm going to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.